Welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as always, is John Bernard.
Good morning, wherever you are. It's morning somewhere.
Yeah. We're here, of course, to continue talking about Andor. But first, I wanted to talk to you about the end of the Righteous Gemstones on HBO last week. This is one we haven't really talked about Gemstones, I think, specifically together. Although I know we're both kind of fans of the Danny McBride overall deal.
I don't know if we've ever really talked about his shows on a show, on an episode. Have we? I don't know. Maybe a little about Vice Principals. Was that even on when we were?
I think so. Vice Principals ended right around when we started this. And we don't do a ton of keeping up with sort of TV shows contemporaneously because it's difficult if you don't get screeners sent to you in advance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're learning this week how tough that can be.
Yeah. So where do you place this in the Danny McBride pantheon?
I don't know. These are all pretty. I mean, if we're comparing this to Eastbound and Down and Vice Principals, so the three HBO shows, leaving the movies out of it, I guess, because it's sort of a different thing. I actually have a really hard time parsing these. I think that they're all very close in quality. And they have most of the same strengths and weaknesses. I kind of love them all in a way, in spite of some of their issues. They're really funny. All three shows are very, very funny. And I think that ultimately that has to be the determining factor for me. What is the funniest show? And I think that might be Righteous Gemstones.
I think that funniest as a judgment is really susceptible to recency bias for me.
That could be. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I remember Vice Principals as being very funny, but I don't remember any of the stuff I was laughing at now. But it was my introduction to Edie Patterson. I know that. And she made an impression there. It's always weird. It's like ranking Wes Anderson in a way. Like you said, the strengths and weaknesses are so constant, like from one to the next, that there are sort of subtle differences in execution you could tease out. But ultimately, if you like one, you're probably going to like them all. And if you don't like one, you're probably not going to like any of them, right?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I would say Eastbound and Down is clearly like the first and earliest and kind of, I guess it's the darkest. It asks, well, I don't know if that's true. I wanted to say
it's kind of the purest in that way, though.
Yeah, it's the ugliest milieu. They kind of, but I want to say that, but then there's Vice Principals, and those characters are just flat out demonic, basically. So I don't know, actually. I mean, Gemstones is the gentlest of the three. I think that's for sure. It is the most traditional in many ways. It is, despite being absolutely foul and characters that are sort of objectively nasty all the time, it is still somehow the nicest of the three. It's Parks and Recreations compared to the darkest moments of Vice Principals.
I guess so. I mean, partly because they come packaged as a family,
right?
And a family that also like works together. And part of their work branding is that family values are important to them and all. So they kind of have to walk the walk a little bit, even if they're really nasty to each other frequently. Like it's never really like it's possibility that one of their spouses might leave them, but it's never like one of these siblings is going to break up from the family and strike it out on their own. They're too like there's too much failure to launch within them anyway. Like
and I mean, even like the family ties, like they make jokes about that at some points. There's a great moment with Baby Billy at some point. I think season 3, where he's like threatening to walk out on him. He's like, "Hey, yeah, you do this wrong, you never go see me again." And he's like, "Well, you're our uncle, so I imagine we're going to see you again."
Okay, Baby Billy. I mean, I think that maybe I put Eastbound at the top of the heap because it is the most pure expression. It's the most like Danny McBride solo act. Him doing like Kenny Powers is his thing. Like Jesse Gemstone feels sort of like a watered down version of Kenny Powers, and so at this point. But that would be a big issue for Righteous Gemstones if Jesse Gemstone had to carry that show the way that Kenny Powers carries Eastbound. But he is maybe the fourth funniest character on this show.
That's about right. Yeah, I would say
a distant fourth. I would say. Because at the top you have Baby Billy and Judy
and Judy,
and,
yeah,
and BJ, of course,
and BJ, and Keith. You could make the argument for Keith after this most recent season being of Jesse as well.
Yes, but he's such a utility player. Keith, like his batting average is so high for coming in and getting a laugh out of me, but he's a designated hitter. Whereas,
true enough,
Jesse has to play all sides of the ball, and mixing sports metaphors.
But yeah, these guys, this ensemble in particular, and John Goodman, no one's going to say is the funniest part of this show. The gravitas he brings to it, though, is so important to the whole. Like, it really gelled as an ensemble very early. And, that's kind of the engine that keeps it running, is essentially the chemistry between the actors, I would say. All the little plots they do, all that stuff, like, the more you watch the show, the more irrelevant those feel, it becomes fairly evident, like, this isn't building to some sort of apotheosis. This is, this is not going to be, structured like a serious crime show, despite several acts of violence throughout, and these little Elmore Leonard-y kind of criminal plot lines that they go through. The results always, everything's going to be fine for the Gemstones.
Yeah, they're going to come out on top, but yes, there will be murders and car chases and shootouts in every season, which is weird. Like, yeah, the amount of like mass shootings and high-speed car chases that John Goodman's Eli Gemstone has been in by the end of the series is really remarkable. Like that is something that separates. Maybe it contributes to the softness you feel on this compared to the others. Is that none of the other shows have a figure like that's presented as sort of straightforward of a hero or of a good guy as Eli Gemstone is. Huh. He's, I mean. Because also, maybe the other thing to talk about here is, do you feel like the show pulls punches in terms of it doesn't really go after the mega church, uber capitalist, Christianity as a business thing, the way that it kind of like fainted at the beginning?
Well, I think it's just, I don't know that it changed necessarily, just sort of our understanding of the show did. I think, it seemed like that's what they were doing. And then it's just like, oh no, that's just the way this show is. They're going to, I mean, the characters are sort of entitled and wealthy and powerful is the setting, essentially. That is the situation part of the situation comedy. And it doesn't really have too many strong ideas on that. Now, I would say Eastbound and Down and Vice Principals are both mining a lot of their comedy from, well, essentially toxic masculinity. Like, there is a rumor that McBride's next project is going to be some sort of Andrew Tate style man life coach kind of thing for HBO. And that makes an enormous amount of sense in the context of his work. But that's not really an aspect of this show, I guess. Gemstones.
Not much. Like it feels fairly incidental.
Yeah.
To big stretches of the season, like where their money comes from. Like, Eastbound kind of played with this too, is that McBride does like playing around with just sort of kind of like Southern wealth, I guess. Just people that don't spend their money on the sort of things we're more used to, like the type of extravagance we're used to seeing on TV. But they just, they had their fancy lake house, which probably costs, $10 million. But that's nothing compared to, I don't know, what you're going to see Vinny Chase doing in Malibu on Entourage or whatever. Like that, he has some fun playing around with that.
There's a fascination with jet skis and monster trucks and Baby Billy's Cybertruck in this last season, stuff like that. That it's all nouveau riche kind of stuff because they are ultimately classless people.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, this season did bring around, I guess, their relationship to being preachers comes up in the finale. Finally, in a way, I think actually that's. I like the way that tied into the premiere and sort of put a bow on that. Those kids sort of finally having to actually do the job that they were born into, and find a way into it, and the way the Bradley Cooper flashback sort of reflects that. It's not a super strict 1-to-1 parallel where that flashback laid out the plot of the entire season. but you see the connection.
I have to admit, I pretty much don't think that they needed to do that. I think it was an indulgence and not bad per se, but just sort of like, I don't think it hit quite at the level that they wanted it to justify itself. Yeah, it's not bad. It's fine. It's a half hour of TV. No big deal. It's a fleeting episode, one less episode with the ensemble this year, and they already always do a flashback. So with when everyone had kids, which are great generally because of the casting of the kids in large part. But yeah, you got your main players on the bench one more week.
Yeah, I found it fun. I mean, I was not like fooled into thinking that they were actually killing off any of these characters at any point, but having them all crawl together and dragging blood across the floor to all be in the same little boat there is, I don't know. It was amusing to me as a thing that I didn't see coming. I mean, like I said, there's no threat to this here. It's become clear at this point, yes, God is on the Gemstones side for whatever reason. And it's even a thing of the McBride. This is another issue, I guess, is that the McBride thing, and I still can't figure out exactly how he thinks about this, but no matter how monstrous his characters are, or how much satire there is built into the toxic masculinity or whatever, those guys are going to win. Ultimately,
it's a weird thing, and 3 seasons in, it's kind of just like it. It no longer feels like a choice. It just feels like, well, this is how we end these things, kind of.
It's not 3. It's 4 seasons of Gemstones, 4 seasons of Eastbound, 2 seasons of Vice Principals.
Yeah,
throwing an observe and report and a foot fist way in there. Like,
yep, that's true.
Those guys, it's not going to be about. There was never
no comeuppance. There's no comeuppance.
Yeah, that Stephen Dorff was going to deliver them like any comeuppance here, or Sean William Scott for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, certainly not. I mean, and this show, it wouldn't have made any sense. Like the characters in Vice Principals, as I said, are just pieces of shit. They are horrid, and they get happy endings. They're just like, yeah, and it worked out, and we're buddies, and that's the end of the show. And it's just like, this does not feel like the show you guys were writing. At least Gemstones does. Like Vice Principals needs to have a Fargo ending if ever there were one. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, there is quite a bit of Fargo in the DNA of these shows. Increasingly through Vice Principals and Gemstones, maybe less so with Eastbound. But
I would say so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, they flirt with it in Eastbound, and it's like full on part of the makeup of the shows after that.
Yeah, and to the point where I feel it's kind of like I don't even know if is it worthwhile to criticize this about these shows when it's just so much part of what I expect from them now.
Well, I would just say I'm not going to confuse it for saying something anymore.
Well, certainly not saying something as sort of pure and didactic in its progressive orthodoxy about like toxic masculinity is bad, guys, and we're going to show you that by having the guys who embody toxic masculinity take great losses and also be lectured to their faces about their toxicity. This, if you want to read more of that, like viewpoint into it, the satire is implicit in that. I guess in McBride or Jody Hill's estimation of things, America is not a place that actually punishes toxic masculinity. In fact, it rewards all of its bad behaviors, and that's remained consistent for 15 years now.
You could argue it's these all have the Wolf of Wall Street ending, I suppose. But, at this point, I just think it's kind of just how they end their shows. I mean, they're saying, McBride has been saying in the press circle for the show that he's the press circle. You know what I'm trying to say.
Circuit.
Yes. McBride's been saying that they didn't even know this was the final season until they were editing it and realized this. I think we're done after this. And it feels like that. That is the vibe. This was never a show that felt like it had an overarching narrative. They've got this little Carl Hyacin crime thing going on every season. It is resolved usually with violence, like always with violence, by the end of the season, and everything works out just fine for the Gemstones. But that doesn't matter. None of that matters because the show's really funny. I was laughing all through the season. I think it's it never lost a step there, and If they feel like they are losing their fastball in some ways, then maybe it is time to move on. But I am sad that we're not going to see this ensemble together anymore. Constituted this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can put Edie Patterson and Tim Baltz in the room together and let them cook for as long as you want, and it's fine. And I don't know if Walton Goggins is improving his way through those things in the same way, but letting him just deliver McBride speak is endlessly entertaining and funny.
This is the funniest performance of his career, I think, without question. Like, Baby Billy is absolutely the funniest Walton Goggins has ever been, and he's a funny fucker. So that's something.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that again, like if this was a show where Keefe was its like signature unique comic creation, it would still be a really good comedy.
Keefe's pretty funny too. Yeah.
But like I said, he's fourth place behind, like, Baby Billy is even funnier. BJ is like a little more, I guess you get the game with him pretty early on. But Tim Baltz is really, really good.
He's a big Chicago comedy guy, right? He probably
well, he's a big improv guy. I don't remember where he started actually, but he's I mean,
I assume Chicago.
I mean, you see it like his episodes of comedy Bang Bang are always highlights because he is just an incredible improviser. Edie Patterson now has become sort of a staple there too.
Oh, good.
With that sort of long form stuff, they can just go and go and go.
She's something in this, man. Man, just what an excellent performance this has been for 4 years. Man. Got to be my favorite of this show, and we did watch Vice Principals again in the last year, and it is very, very fun to see them discover her in that show. Her role expands dramatically over the course of it, and to the point where yes, she's one of the leads here, and what a delivery on potential, just excellent from the get out. Just man, she's got that monologue in the first season.
Oh yeah.
It's basically
about her failed relationship that was a sexual assault perpetrated by her.
That is basically the GEMSTONES version of an ANDOR monologue. Yes.
Yes, it's that's one of the best speeches in TV history. It's like I hope people are like auditioning with that speech.
I guarantee they are.
But in terms of not delivering on potential, okay. I feel like the show never quite fully decided what they wanted to do with Gideon. Not that I really care about Gideon one way or the other. And I feel like this is my harshest critique of the show is I feel like it kind of lost track of what to do with John Goodman after a while. And
I thought actually his story in season 4 was very good. I thought I liked that.
Okay. Well, one, I think ending the show with like him and Megan Mullally getting together as a happy ending is wildly unbelievable, even in this like cartoon milieu that we're in. But the show seems to ask me to be invested in this relationship. It's like, no, I mean, like her ex-husband tried to rape and murder you, and your children murdered her child. Like your children all shot each other. Like this is
a Baby Billy line, actually. Yeah. But maybe that was a bridge too far.
No, he's right. Baby Billy, not on target that often, but nailed that one, let me tell you. And to end the entire series sort of on like that, like, oh, Eli gets to go do comes on a boat. That's not because there's no satire there. Like Kenny Powers getting a happy ending, or like his version of it does have a satirical element, but because Eli has always been a more straightforward, just like likable figure, and fairly sincere and competent in such contrast to the rest of his family, it just feels like, oh yeah, this is we want to get like pay off this nice little romantic arc we've done. Like that doesn't fit anymore.
I mean, this show's always been like gentler, you know. It has actual affection for its characters. That it kind of has to hand wave away that they're frequently nasty and cruel and stupid, you know, like, you know, because it takes them seriously in these sort of silly little predicaments and roles they find themselves in, and for their narrative arcs each season. This show's way more earnest than the last two.
But that's why I felt like with Goodman over as the seasons wore on, more and more it felt like his performance had to be just Eli completely ignoring the last 4 or 5 insane, crass things that were said in front of him, and then having no reaction to that,
right?
And then just saying the next thing. And now to the point of this next scene is going to be this, and so it almost felt like he was there, but not like really there half the time.
I think there is an element of half-baked satire to this. Like, for example, the Gemstones having no issues with Kelvin coming out as a gay man.
That's another thing that
not even a conversation. And on the one hand, they like these characters and the characters like each other. And the show is not going to be anti-homosexuality, like they're not going to make that argument. So, it seems like, of course, they're not going to do it. They just
sidestep it entirely with like their church does not have a reaction to it whatsoever, which does not feel truthful at all.
I mean, Stephen Dorff brings it up as a villain, after the fact, long after the fact. But, and I mean, I think there is a satirical thing you could do there, which is just like, it's fine when we do sins, like, it's all good for us. Whatever we want to do is okay because we're God's chosen, it's just not bad, not good when you do it. They don't even really attempt that though. Like it's
more of a sort of just capitalistic rebranding they're doing, that they realize like that they were losing ground on the Stephen Dorff, traditional front anyway with Goodman retiring. And this is the thing that starts bringing some new money into their operation. And so now they're willing to completely reshape their relationship to the Gospels in this regard. But they don't even really like engage with that at all.
Well, this is my question.
The homophobia is all coming from externally. Like,
yeah. And here's the question though, like, is the show, I definitely can see a version of the show that engages with those plot lines and actually is about the church and mega churches in the modern context and what they do to survive, how cynical it is, how they justify it, how it's not cynical, even whatever. They can have that show, and that show could exist in this framework and with these characters, even in sort of a heightened sitcom way. I don't know that it's a better show necessarily.
No, maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, it would be more quote unquote successful, but I think the true metric here is going to be how funny is it?
Yeah, it's laughs per minute is ultimately what matters. And that, you're right, that might be a less funny show.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe they could nail it and it would be, fulfilling on several levels at once. Well, who can say? I wouldn't trade the comedy for anything, because that's sort of the thing here. There's a precious few really funny shows out there, and now we're down one more of those. So
that's true.
That's
what's not a very funny show? Andor.
Not especially. No, kind of a hard edge on that one.
Particularly this week.
Mm-hmm.
The subtitle of this week being "Bad Luck Gorman."
That's the line. Yeah. Mm.
How do you feel? I mean, to me, okay, like episode 7
basically doesn't exist, honestly.
Table setting, entirely for episode 8, which is the humdinger. Really, like, I mean, I guess it's their version of the big when the wildlings attack the wall in Game of Thrones, or the giant.
Yeah, that's what this is.
Zombie battles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then episode 9 it goes back to spy thriller stuff. And I feel like episode 9 has some really good sequences in it, and also shows to me like this strain of doing what the show is doing in a Star Wars setting more than any other episode of the show. I think that I can cite. I
would have to agree. It simply because, like, I mean, we're fully doing prequel stuff, with this. Like we're really engaging with the Senate Hall, which a scant 15 years earlier was the battleground between an evil space wizard and a green toad wizard,
frog. Yeah, so
who were flinging those floating chairs at one another and shooting lightning, bouncing it off laser swords. And we're going to do, parliamentary discussions and spycraft thrillers in that setting. And we're going to see the metal detectors and all that stuff. And on one hand, I'm fascinated by this. Absolutely fascinated.
Yeah.
But
well, there's more to it than just the prequel stuff coming to bear on that episode, I feel. But maybe we should go chronologically.
Let's get back to Gorman. Okay.
So as we're starting off, we're now on to Yavin, where Cassian and Bix are living in, Andor's best approximation of domestic bliss, I suppose. And
it's the happiest these guys are going to be. Yeah.
We have Willman resurfacing, who has been one of the surprises of this season, like how much play the kid who threw the bomb in the season finale ended up getting here, and how like convincingly that actor has grown up throughout these time jumps. Like he does seem legitimately older each week.
More than anyone, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Diego Luna's got whatever, black magic that Keanu and Paul Rudd use to just does not age. But
yeah, they're pretty much fine on that stuff, I think. I mean, the benefits of doing only the 2 seasons, I suppose. I do wish it was more. I wish season 2 had just been Gorman, kind of. And we had more to look forward to. That would have been nice. Yeah.
It would be great if we could get more, but
yeah,
I also, a lot of what I love about this, or something I've learned to love about this, is these time jumps are, for as rickety as they are, something about it fits this show's whole like demeanor and bearing really well. That like things are happening, a lot of it's happening off screen, which fits our sort of our spy's perspective on things. That's that spies in a conflict like this, I guess, have to operate on so much faith that whoever, their handlers have the information they need and are giving them good information. And, the fumbling around in the dark thing, I guess that's John McCara stuff too, is not quite knowing who you can trust on your side if they're telling you everything. To what extent do they care about you as an asset or a person? And that has come to a head, that Luthen is now sort of at odds with the more
everyone.
But everyone. That's a good way of putting it. Right.
But Luthen remains kind of right almost every time.
Yeah,
he's right still about Bail Organa. I mean, he's got everyone's number at this point.
He does still retain like his ability to see a few more pages of the script than anybody else. He just, if he needs to know what's going on behind the scenes anywhere, he does. But and again, like that, if it were stretched out over 5 seasons, that might get repetitive and less believable and irksome. But here, kind of knowing things are speeding towards probably a dark end for him, I'm willing to buy it for another week or two.
I mean, he's such a fatalistic guy at this point. We're already talking about. It seems like every week he's talking about they're going to hang me one of these days. So a bit of a fait accompli.
The main thing I would say Episode 7 does here that's new is bringing sort of the intrusion of the Force, destiny mumbo jumbo, into this very grounded world, which I think it could be a disaster. Trying like this late in the game to incorporate the mysticism.
I think it's a good idea. It ties it all into what we're they are making strides to tie this to the Star Wars that we all know at this point in the classiest way possible, like the Senate Hall stuff later. But like, I think they needed to mention it once in some context and over the run of this show. I didn't want to see a Jedi, but I'm glad to have a Force user or a Force sensitive person at least, and showing up in a role that would exist within the society as set up. That's cool. That's very Andor.
Yeah, and one that, like you said, if this is what I have to do to keep lightsabers out of this show, great. I'll accept that, because you're right. It's a role that would exist within the rebellion, but it does not, solve any otherwise intractable problems for Luthen and Cassian.
Well, I mean, it's essentially a crystal healer at this, in this as presented here. I mean, we know there's more juice to it than that, simply because we're aware of Star Wars. But it's just sort of it's an old lady who she knows the ways of the Force and she'll help you. And they don't even put it in as fine a point as that, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always very tempting, I think, as a writer to do prophecies. And like, it's sort of showing off that, in a way, that you know where things are going. Or if not showing off, reassuring would be a more positive way of saying, don't worry, like this, there's a design at work here. Like, you're in good hands. Like, we're moving towards something here.
Well,
and I feel like on other shows, maybe shows run by Dave Filoni, you would get big sort of like plot heavy foreshadowing layout of things there. Or suggestions that Cassian might be a Jedi level, whatever himself. He's got the touch. But we don't really need any of that here. The show has been so successful decoupling heroism in Star Wars from Force powers that I don't need someone high on Force powers to come in and validate Andor's importance for me as a Star Wars fan, and/or the show or the character.
It's interesting. I mean, there is some mention of his destiny, right? What is it exactly in this? It's very,
they call it a messenger.
Yeah. It strikes me like prequels, by their very nature, are essentially, I mean, I guess they can talk about it in the text or not, but they are being presented to an audience who is like familiar with the prophecy, I guess.
Yeah.
We are all aware of the prophecy, even if the characters are not, when you watch a prequel.
Yes. Whether you include a prophet character in there, like spouting verse about it, you're right. The hand of fate hangs over any prequel because we have knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, that's explicit in the Star Wars prequels, for example. But in this case too. And it's interesting that they've tipped their hand at all in that regard. That's a weird way to think about that, because everything they do to get us in line with where we know these characters end up has the hand of fate in it, The arrival of KS-2O here.
Melshi, don't forget everybody's favorite guy, Melshi.
Well, it's all just like, it's stuff that kind of has to be there, and you're kind of waiting for it because it is required narratively. Well, frankly, this is why you don't want to make prequels most of the time, I would say, unless you can make a virtue of this. And that is actually something I'm not sure they've pulled off. It's good. It's inevitable they have to do these things, but
I think Andor has pulled it off really well. Like, that's okay, because you're right.
Well, it's just like we know who lives and who dies, honestly.
Sure.
Well, I mean, we don't actually know that Luthen dies, but come on, the track is ahead of all these characters, and we know where some of it ends, and then we know some goes a little farther and then ends, and then we know that Mon Mothma will make it through the whole thing. That's just the nature of the beast.
It is, and so we know that Melshi will die too, and that's like saying, on paper, you describe that scene to me. I mean, look, it's not a great scene as it is by Andor standards, but you described to me like, oh, this is like the worst terrible prequel shit. Is we have to grasp a character as incidental as this, who had one line in Rogue One, and then try and use, because we just have all this prequel real estate we have to fill. We need to infuse that character with that importance, so that the werewolf guy from the cantina has to eventually have his own spin-off series. But what I think Andor has done so successfully, in which, as we get into episode 8 and the whole Gorman massacre is demonstrated there, really is elevating the importance of the incidental characters.
Yeah.
Is so intrinsic to what Andor's doing. And how many ISB stooges we're familiar with now is one thing. But I am stunned that now, looking at this, we're 8 episodes in with all of the jerkiness that these time jumps entail. And I know 8 or 10 like faces and characters in the Gorman front group of doomed like rebels that had the reddest of shirts painted on them and bullseyes. Like, we knew not to invest in these people intellectually, but now they're running around like, oh, we know we got the head guy, the grandpa who's trying to tell everybody to be calm, and then his daughter, and then she's got a boyfriend, and Willman's now got a girlfriend there that is different, and then we have the guy that shot Cinta on accident, and then we have the other like French peasant guy that was there for that and joined up, that is, shaped like a very, very French Modoc.
That dude's great.
Yeah, I love him. And there's like 8 of them now, and then there was a bellhop too that is involved. It involved deeply.
Oh yeah,
I've invested in that character out of nowhere. Now.
Love him. He gets the line from Rogue One in this. that knocked me down a little.
And that's that. It's prequel fan service, or it could be. Except actually, that line working its way through the saga, working its way up from this random bellhop to Cassian, to Jyn or so.
Yeah,
and sort of like almost a Princess Leia without a direct transfer at the end of that show, or at the end of that movie.
Well,
that is really key to that. They're carrying the fire of the rebellion forward. Like that. They're dramatizing that really well here.
Yeah, you're winning me over on this. I think it actually has been kind of excellent. The way that intergalactic affairs and massive seismic events turn on what's that guy who shot Cinta drives his car into KS-2O. And
what a great payoff that is.
Because of that, because that happened, the Death Star will be destroyed, essentially. That's kind of great. None of the characters were able to know that. We, as the omniscient audience, is aware of that and is able to clock that. I mean, or you could be a character with an important plot line and does a lot of things and have a lot of narrative underneath you, and your story ultimately changes nothing and amounts to nothing, like Cyril Karn.
Yeah. Oh man. That's kind of what we're circling here is what also it's working so well with the prequel knowledge we have. I mean, not just the prequel knowledge, but just the knowledge as an audience, that the characters don't understand those significant. Cassian was not at that raid where Cinta died, so he doesn't go, "Oh, it's you." Mm-hmm. That's just for us,
right?
And him. The kicker, the capper on Cyril's whole life being, that
I don't even know
Cyril,
who you are.
That Cassian's been his Moby Dick for years now. But for Cassian, it was Tuesday when he ruined Cyril's life.
Yeah, it's great. It's vicious. I actually feel real bad for Cyril after all this. He fucks up every single interaction he has. It's.
And his relationship goes to shit in the last hour of his life too. He just caught astray a little earlier. He could have at least not had to go through that part.
And it all happens in a way that he can't really be called a victim either. It's. Oh yeah. He kind of sees what happened and what's wrong, but he doesn't really have the wherewithal to do anything positive about it. He just kind of. He's the agitator from the outside, and that overrides everything and gets him killed. It's a sad and pathetic death in many ways. But also,
and it doesn't come at the hand of Cassian.
No,
having the old man do it. That's so perfect for me. It straddles the line between being diffuse and random enough to not feel super telegraphed, but also being a satisfying payoff to their little mini arc of Cyril and that guy's relationship.
And it also, I like that it has a narrative heft to it and feels like something out of a novel, but it also only to us on the outside watching it. To Cyril, this is just a crazy fucking 90 minutes that ends in his death. Right. And he basically doesn't even kind of have a free moment to kind of reflect and see the ways he fucked up. He's just kind of in a panic and going. And then,
those last 3 seconds of his life where the gun starts to lower. That's the only moment.
Brutal. Pretty great. And
how just brutal was the fist fight? Just in terms of, I feel like we don't see fisticuffs that rough and tumble in Star Wars, really.
Not really, no. Any ground level kind of stuff, they're doing better here than they've ever done in Star Wars, pretty much across the boards. This might be the best fist fight in Star Wars. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's really much. That's not a thing they've ever got to. It's crazy. I don't know why. You could do kung fu fights in Star Wars. I guess Rogue One with the blind guy.
Yeah,
did some kung fu fisticuffs.
He does. It's pretty good, but Oh, I do like that character. Yeah, that's the kind of guy that, this ground level stuff really allows for. And I mean, obviously he's not going to be part of this show, but, I, shit, man, I wouldn't mind if now that this is over, if they want to do something else, if they want to do a prequel about those guys, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's getting older, but I guess you can always recast. I mean, part of it is if you don't have Donnie Yen doing the
Donnie Yen is a much younger man than he looks much younger than he is. So maybe it's fine.
That catches up to you eventually. Okay, but look, I mean, the whole buildup on Gorman is incredible. Like that, and
the singing, the incredible piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, their Gorman version of Les Marseilles that they're singing is such a great touch. Like the culture here, we've talked about a lot already. The way that, as much as this is Space France, the way that Andor infuses each planet with its own like distinct culture. The anvils on Ferrix and their brick ceremonies, and then everything on Aldhani being separate, like different than that. Great stuff.
Terrific. Yes. It's some of the best stuff in this entire franchise ever. This sequence. I mean, this is getting all the hype. This is everyone's saying this is like, all the reviews of people who have seen the whole thing. But like, this is the shit here. This is what we were all really excited about. Was the episode 8 and 9 kind of a 1-2 punch. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's more just this is the tone the show has. I thought last week was as good, if not as impactful. I'm not quite sure what point I'm making here, but
every week has been great for me. Like there's highs and lows within each week, but I've never not been pleased as punch with all of them.
Well, this is the payoff, I guess you'd say. But I've been liking the setup as much as the payoff.
Yeah, pretty that's much part of what the show does so well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, this is obviously it's sort of a seismic episode in the context of Andor, but quality wise, it's kind of business as usual. It's just great.
Yeah, it's just bigger, I suppose, in this case. Yeah. I mean, as much as it's confined to the one set they have there, I mean, I still think they make great use of that, is because it is just a tea kettle that is starting to scream more and more.
A tough one. This is tough to stage such a thing where this is the narrative you have to tell. It ends with a massacre, basically an enormous one, like to rival the old Grand Moff Tarkin one, and then some. The kind of massacre that will have the intergalactic Senate debating it and lying about it and spinning it. It has to be huge, but you also you have to show it visually. You have to find a way to represent this on screen. And that's actually really tough to make this feel like more than just an uprising, or a segment of Les Miserables where they barricade the streets and, they all get gunned down. They're moving on from that most of the time. This has to be really big.
And it has to be more indifferent than what they did in the season finale last year. Or not, I guess it's like 3 years ago now, but last season.
Yeah. And larger in scale, though. This is not Ferrix. This is, a capital city or something like that on a wealthy planet. So, it has to be an enormous event. It's just tough to do. It's just tough to show that. And I think what they do, I guess, is ground level it. They show it from Andor and Cyril's perspective, for the most part, and the people just getting wrecked.
Yeah, if you can't spend 40 minutes, zooming around this planet, showing like, giant spectacle of things burning, what you can do is give us 7 or 8 characters that we have, almost in spite of ourselves, gotten to be familiar with, and put them all in that same place. I mean, actually, 7 or 8, whatever, French red shirts, but also Cyril and Cassian and Wilman and Dedra are all running around there too, of course.
Dedra, by the way, man, she's a good actress, man.
She's really good.
Denise Goff, that scene when she's, sort of comporting herself afterwards, that's something else, man. That's
yeah. I mean, her and Kyle Solar are both just giving incredible acting here. I mean, you could go deep on this show for acting awards in my books. Like there's 5 or 6 just incredible performances going on here. Yeah, shocking when you flip it over and compare it to the Obi-Wan show Boba Fett.
Now that's really crazy to think those are the same franchise. Who's your standout number one performer for the whole show? I think I know.
I think I got to give it to Genevieve O'Reilly.
Yeah.
I think she's got some of the most subtly difficult material, because everything has to be behind this, acting facade, and she doesn't even get to do the sort like Skarsgård gets to do the showier version of switching between the personas. And
he's kind of stopped doing that. It feels like he's kind of just like
he's given up on the on the swishy art dealer guy. Yeah. But she just has to do modulations of sort of the curtain rising and falling, but being more or less the same person, and that's very difficult. And then she just has to play a lot of difficult stuff out with just her face, and she's really, really fucking good at that.
Mm-hmm. Which gets us to episode 9, which is whoa. I
suppose one more thing about the gore thing, just
sure.
Well, I love how Cyril's sort of like one. We had a disagreement last week about whether there was still the potential for Cyril to like have a change of heart and come over to the rebel side. And I love how episode 8 kind of made us both right and wrong. Totally. It really split the difference. But I love that like the moment he knows things are wrong is when he sees the KS droids, and how fucking terrifying this show made those big goofy droids. Like they managed to make TIE Fighter scary again, which is impressive. And now these droids, man, like they're just Terminators. It's
murder droids.
Very close to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing how much scarier they are than like let's say the droid Decaz. They never really nailed this in the prequels. I mean, part of that, I guess, was that the droid army was sort of old and outdated. Was kind of the point, but yeah, they were goofy little robots, and we weren't scared of them. And it's been no problem to make this thing scary, even though it looks silly. Yeah, it looks like a cartoon guy, but nope.
I mean, this is a pretty granular level to get down to, but just the way that they stage things. Okay, so you got the head guy, Rylance, I think his name is, that ends up shooting Cyril. So his daughter is the dark-haired one. Yeah, that she's got a boyfriend in the group and in the crowd with her there. And as the shooting gets off, pops off, and the stormtroopers are doing what's the Russian steps from Battleship Potemkin?
The Russian steps from Battleship Potemkin. Yeah. The Odessa steps.
Yes. They start doing that. Now things are going crazy, and they're shooting back and forth. And the boyfriend catches a shot in his side, and she's she sees him injured and is distraught by that. And now the droids are making their appearance on the scene, kicking that concrete barricade through a person. That's incredible. But just like the micro level sort of twists in how this goes, because you think, oh, okay, that guy's lying on the ground injured. This droid she's going to look on horrified as this droid stomps over and like kills him, like finishes him off. That's to establish the droid villainy or whatever. But no, it does not clock him as a threat and just runs over to her and just tosses her 20 feet in the air. And
that's enough. Yeah.
It's not cartoonishly high, but it's just, he falls on concrete and dies like that. It's so much more grounded than you would expect, but also just the way it backfoots me on such a micro level there of like just twisting my expectations within that 10 seconds of screen time. It's very effective stuff.
I have to admit, I'm also kind of like, oh, is that going to be KS2O? There's a little the prequel prophecies. Is it time? Is he showing up now?
It is, yeah,
and it is, yes. That's that is the push and pull of such a thing, I suppose. It wouldn't be Star Wars if you weren't kind of just like, that you see that connects to that.
Yeah, I don't know why that satisfies me here where it irks me in every other prequel ever made. It's like, I know the thing. Indiana Jones has a whip. I know. This brings us to episode 9 now, which is our Mon Mothma episode. Well, you didn't answer. Mon Mothma, I said, was my top performance. Do you give it to Solar or?
I think I'm probably going to go Mon Mothma as well. Honestly, I think that's I think that's pretty much what you got to do after this season in particular. They figured her out. You could do a show about her too. That'd be just fine with me.
I mean, they pretty much did here.
Right, yeah, but if you want to keep this thing rolling, you know. I don't know. It feels like there's... Actually, that would be difficult. Because you can't really do her on Yavin without bringing in a lot of characters like Princess Leia and such. And
I don't know. Does she have as much to do on Yavin?
Yeah, and there's less for her to actually do.
It's not as fraught.
Yeah, she's just sort of, I guess, a general after this. Somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she gives speeches, but there's going to be diminishing returns on those, like in terms of TV.
Yeah, and what sort of bureaucratic role is really going to be required in, open combat, which is about where we're hitting.
Yeah, that is the question, but it's also the question of when.
Well, this is the interesting Mothma stuff here. Yeah, what we're doing right now, that's the story for Mothma, and it's good. It's really good. They're nailing it.
Yeah, okay, but this is where I feel like we get some dramatic stretches here, okay. And we're like what the grounded spy thriller stuff runs up against the Star Wars stuff. So you're right. It's cool that we see the metal detectors in the Senate, but also the Galactic Senate apparently has not invented security cameras yet for when they're making their escape. And that's just a conceit that we have to roll with, that they are unable to just track these people probably anywhere on this planet.
Yeah, continuously. We basically have that tech now before we got, space cars.
We've had it since the 90s. Yeah. They're probably the latest.
Yeah.
I do wish, what would have gone a long way, actually, for me, just to help suspend disbelief. Why, say everybody in the Senate is wearing dark hoods or shawls or something that day, they're being passed out to commemorate the Imperial martyrs of Gorman or whatever, and that helps them hide faces as they're escaping, because everybody's wearing these same hoods, and so the Imperials are flipping through the cameras trying to figure out who.
That's not bad. Yeah,
as opposed to being the only red-haired woman in the galaxy. But, also 6'1", maybe.
If we're actually serious about this, though, she's, once she's a senator, she's got her DNA stamped, and they can find her anywhere in the world. If that they would have that tech, that would be a natural security step you would take.
Yeah, and I suppose it becomes a question of how much sort of screen real estate do you want to devote to establishing? Okay, but the rebels have some sort of computer virus, digital countermeasures to mess up the surveillance stuff to effectuate this escape. You have to kind of assume that's happening.
Well, Luthen could give her a thing this will disrupt your signature.
Yeah,
Luthen, exactly. I told you I don't want this. You'll need it. Yeah, the scene writes itself. Sure.
Yeah,
but how much do you want to do that?
The perfect item for a thief with a record.
Make Ben Mendelsohn deliver that thing again. Yeah,
that'd be wonderful.
Well, I mean, I guess you could assume all those scenes happened. You could assume all those scenes did happen. They just didn't show it because,
And they did show us the scene of Clea forging, crest credentials for Cassian, which are apparently pretty high end because they can get them into the Imperial Senate.
But I'll have to float this day. Sorry, best you can do.
Yeah, the minutia here. It's always just right on point.
Yeah. And
I love that guy then he's being told to cut the feed. And he's trying to do it, and clearly the technical tech support people that he's relying on are also rebels.
That's good.
Because that they establish with one look they give each other after he runs back to the other office where they left the codes. Again, we're into Trollish territory because there's a lot of great spy thriller stuff here. You have the mole within Bail Organa's crew, so now we have some back and forth spy versus spy stuff, and they're paying off. That, I mean, one, we now have another sort of hyper competent aide de camp that her second is a spy planted by Luthen, and we still have Clea running around being her badass self. I love that they gave that scene where she's forging the credentials for him. That could have been a Luthen and Cassian scene if that actress hadn't overthrown her coverage so much, and they're now giving her bigger things to do, and maybe that helps them with Stellan Skarsgård's schedule. I don't know how that works behind the scenes, but also it just fits that it makes Luthen that much more isolated now, which feels important.
That's true. It's great that I love how she's kind of modulated her performance of Clea. She seems to get harder and a little bit more pissed off every year, I would say. She's not putting up with shit that she might have 2 years ago anymore. She's Luthening, I guess you might say. She's becoming more and more like him.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it last week. I love her.
Yeah, she's great. She's great.
But I love that. Yeah, it's great that she's such a good actress that she can carry that dramatically with Cassian, that she can, deliver I thought that's what we're fighting for line when he's talks about wanting to go chart his own course. And, but also it underlines what I was talking about earlier, that the bench of this rebellion is so deep that everybody's got to be heroes, down to the Melchies and the random French kids.
And it turns on all of it. I mean, I guess that's the point more than anything. And maybe that helps with the prequelness of it too. If that we're clocked in on that predestination of all these characters, we can appreciate the little things that end up making such a huge difference in the moment, even if the characters never will understand that, never see that, the larger tapestry. I mean, that's the cool thing you can do with a prequel, I suppose.
Well, the prequelness of it, I guess, and that predestination aspect brings us to the Bix of it all, which is the other area where I feel like we're starting to episode 9 feels like it's rubbing against sort of some broader real world issues, perhaps, because Bix deciding to end this long-term relationship via surprise dramatic monologue does not feel as like organic of a development as some of the other stuff that we've been praising. It feels like a thing that you have to do on TV sometimes when actors have other obligations they have to get to.
Well, this isn't even an actor thing. This is this character needs to be unencumbered by family going into Rogue One.
See, I guess that's what it is. Well, because I've heard people say that, they have to get Bix out of the way because she it can't be involved in Rogue One because she wasn't. So we had to blah, blah. But I don't think that's right. I don't think that Luthen has to die in order to explain why he's not in Rogue One, or that Bix has to, explicitly tell us. They don't need to tell us where these people are. I think part of the deep bench thing I'm talking about here is I can buy that Luthen or Vel or Bix are just doing something somewhere else for that week of Rogue One.
I guess Luthen doesn't have to die per se, but I want to know why he's not there. They better answer that one for me.
Oh, he will. He'll get a big dramatic death.
Yeah, I expect
in the
so.
next match.
Bix, I didn't really need her to die, but it seemed narratively and just, that the predestination of it all, we would need her out of the picture, especially if she's got a kid, because that is not it's just not the Cassian Andor we meet at the beginning of Rogue One. He's not a guy who's going home, who is happy in his life. He's sort of a husk when we meet him in Rogue One. He's just killing people in the street, and he's kind of like refinding some of his humanity over the course of that film is sort of his arc within that movie.
Right. Well, but could you not accomplish that by having her accept an assignment somewhere else? I guess
that's essentially what they did. I mean, she's gone is the point.
Yes, but they chose to couch it in the Force mysticism and her being more of a believer in Cassian's purpose, like higher purpose than he is. Which, it's done with some artistry, I think, in both the writing and performance. But it still feels like it feels like a move that was forced upon this character by broader franchise considerations or industry considerations.
Her entire purpose is to end up in this place, and to not be present in Rogue One. They knew this going in when they created the character of Bix. So, I don't know. It creates a bit of a problem in that you're building a character to be not present in the future, and you still kind of run into this thing where it's just like, well, we have to come up with a reason for her not to be present.
And coming up with that reason, I think, is difficult. This is the character that I think most harmed by the time jump structure here.
That could be. She's honestly...
She's in a very different position. I mean, we're saying that it's kind of a strength in some cases, that, the Gorman front is in a different position from one week to the next. I like that. But this character is going through shifts where she's on the job, she's off the job, she's on drugs, she's off drugs, and that changes. And now she's like found religion maybe, and a lot of that happens between Wednesday and Monday of our week.
Yes, and I also think that something that is not really in Bix's favor is that she is kind of fallen into the. I don't want to say Skylar White because that is a loaded comparison, but she is the person who's trying to convince Andor not to be a rebel a lot of the time.
No, I think they've really tacked away from that. She's trying. She leaves because she says, "I won't let you stop being a rebel."
Right. She's not actively being against it, but she is pulling him against it. Nonetheless, she's the reason he wants to stop being a rebel.
Yeah, he's friendly.
And she sees that and wants to step away as well. And that's why she, I was happy when it happened because it's just like, well, good, because we know he's going to be a rebel. Like we know this is happening. You maybe could have done this last week, honestly. It's well, you wouldn't have had some of their stuff this week, but I don't know. It feels like the show slows down a bit when we're dealing with Bix. She's not involved in the big, exciting things ever. She has her own plot lines, and some of them have been good. The actress, very good. Very pretty, but it is a character that kind of tends to occupy the least interesting parts of any given episode, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, at least since the opening on the farm planet, where she was kind of deep in the shit there. And
that was good stuff.
She got to do the assassination mission, but that was sort of like almost a post-credit stinger.
Yeah.
But, I mean, she got to do the badass walk away from an explosion with your back turned.
Sure.
That's fun action stuff.
I agree. Yeah. And those are her best moments in the season. When she's doing something active and being part of a mission. Yeah.
The big dramatic monologue, not the best this season. That's all. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The I'm leaving you this recording because I can't do it in person. Just never really strikes me as that real of a human response to anything. It feels like, oh, this is a way that a TV writer would like the character to find this and be blindsided by it and not have the chance to argue it. And so it's more of a dramatic conceit than I feel like a real human response to anything. And, mostly we praise Andor, the show, for having so much more of the real humanity in it than most Star Wars do.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? I feel like this is something I've seen, and so I think I just saw something recently that has this exact same device where she, the wife leaves a note that explains, "I'm leaving so you can be who you're meant to be." I've seen this scene a number of times. I think it's something I saw like within the last month too. It's very tropey, and sort of it feels like we're kind of clearing the table of extraneous pieces a little bit, which I'm okay with. I
suppose, but again, I think what's so key to my appreciation of the series is that that ethos that none of the pieces are really extraneous. That French kid that drove the truck might show up again next week. Might do something vital. He also might do something vital between now and Rogue One that we just never see because it's off screen. But that feels like part of what the show's trying to get across.
Oh, sure. There's thousands of isolated incidents that bring about the rebellion that no one will ever be aware of. Basically, even the people who did them. Yeah, that seems to be the point here, and that's pretty great. It is still beholden to traditional plot and expectations of character, and just because it's heightened and great doesn't mean it's just gonna that everything it does is going to be next level genius. I think they're gonna have to rely on some structural ballast here, just to keep things flowing. And I think that actually is one of the issues they're coming up against with this this structure that I think we both agree is working. The 3 episodes per year, then the time jump. They've made a virtue of that, but with that in place and driving directly into Rogue One, those are 2 big things that they have to just sort of contend with. That are going to be huge things that they are dealing with this season of television. If you're not just going to do the entire Gorman season, you're going to do the entire story of what happened to Andor between season 1 and Rogue One. there's limitations and shortcuts you're going to have to take. And I think Bix is one of those.
And I feel like episode 9, though, is where so many of those limitations and shortcuts all come out at once. Because not only like this is what we talk about with Bix and that not being totally believable, it's like that big dramatic monologue doesn't even get to be the end of the episode, because then we have to do, what is essentially a post-credit stinger of the K2 being awoken for prequel maintenance purposes. And you have the stuff of, we have to accept at face value, dramatic conceit that, okay, there's no real surveillance in the Senate, so they can get her out of there, even when the Imperials were tipped off. And also it's like super important that she gives this speech before she flees. Like, I don't know that I was totally sold on it being vital to the overall project that she deliver this speech that was probably going to be cut off 10 seconds into it anyway. But I can accept it.
Had something to say.
I can accept it as a dramatic conceit, but I felt like I just had to do more. Like most of the just acceptance of things as dramatic conceits that I've had to do with the entire series, I had to do in episode 9 of this season. It felt like.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, look, man, I have to run here, but I'm very excited for one more week of Andor here, the big finale. I don't know. I feel like we've probably, I don't know. It seems like it. I don't know what to expect other than the death of Luthen. That I have no idea how they're gonna square all this stuff into a whole, and come up with a satisfying resolution for this story. It's going to be an interesting thing to see, and I mean. It does feel like the story of this season was Gorman, and the rest of it is going to be, prequel stuff. Honestly, it's kind of making everything fit into place. Feels like what we're headed into, and I'm fine with that. But it's. I'm not expecting the absolute best of Andor next week, simply because of all the things it must accomplish.
Yeah, I can.
Which fine.
The gap between the absolute best of Andor and the absolute worst is pretty narrow anyway in my
You're right.
internal books. So I can accept it if it's a middle of the road one. That's still going to be fucking awesome. Maybe my favorite thing I watched this year.
So far, yeah. All right, man. Well, any final thoughts on episodes 7 through 9?
No. We'll be back next week. Maybe talk a little bit about The Last of Us too while we're at it. Oh, sure.
We'll be up to saying some stuff about that. Jeffrey Wright's in it now.
Yeah,
filling that void.
There's some interesting things there. I think some of the stuff you're talking about with Bix and the Skylar White aspect of it all. Mm-hmm. I do think if the show did not handle that completely elegantly, I bought this version of handling that better than I think they've done with the Dina character on The Last of Us.
I like Dina. Okay, all right. We'll talk about it next week with further Last of Us developments and of course the big Andor finale. All right. Thanks for listening. All right.